Good evening, Mr. Markwar's history class. This is the third lecture in our study of World War II, and this is going to focus on the European theater of World War II. And tonight, we have a special guest host. Or I guess I'm the host, and she's the talker. Her name is Miss Tiffany, and she finished making me dinner, so this was her reward.
Oh, thanks, Mr. Markor.
All right. So, Miss Tiffany is going to read to you guys, and I'm going to interject things
Pretty much like he normally does, I'm sure.
as we go along. So make sure when you are copying down your notes, make sure you're answering the questions on the left hand side of your note sheet.
So tonight's topic is World War II, defeating the Axis.
Axis.
Okay, always correcting me. So where did you leave off, Mr. Markor?
Well, we left off earlier today. We did a little map activity where the students had to fill out a map based off of the map in their textbook. It looked similar to this, but we focused on Europe, not necessarily Asia. We'll come to that on another time. So we will move on.
So Europe's turning points in the war. There was the Battle of, how do you say that?
Stalingrad.
In 1941. And the North African invasion in 1942, the invasion of Italy in 1943, Normandy in 1944, and the Battle of the Bulge, December of 44 to January of 45. What was the Stalin-Hitler Pact?
So some of this is going to be a review from what you learned last year, but it should sort of set the table, so to speak,
Oh,
for
just like you
the
did tonight.
events to come.
You set the table.
So the Stalin-Hitler Pact, also known as the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact, you don't need to know that. It's just another name. These are some political cartoons making fun of it.
So the invasion of USSR, or Russia, right?
It's USSR at the time.
In June of 1941, in violation with the Nazi-Soviet pact, Hitler began a massive invasion of the Soviet Union.
And if you remember from world history last year, several other world leaders, or I guess, uh, not dictators, just military people,
Military leaders?
Yeah, there you go. Have tried to invade Russia or the Soviet Union at various times throughout history and has not ever been successful. And there's a number of reasons why.
So Germany was always on the offense, and Hitler wanted to defeat the inferior Soviets. So Germany tried to capture. Say it again.
Stalingrad.
But the Soviets held their ground, and the Germans were then surrounded and surrendered. But the Battle of
Stalingrad
is a turning point in the war because it put the Germans on the defense for like the first time, right?
Yes, the first time.
You want to add something?
Good. So why did Germany lose the Battle of Stalingrad? There are a number of reasons. These are the most important reasons. The German air attack reduced the city to rubble, and so there was really no place for the German army to hide. They destroyed all of the buildings.
So, but because of that, they were outnumbered as well, right?
Yes.
And they weren't prepared for how cold it was, right?
Yes.
And because of the lack of city or whatever, they couldn't restock their supplies.
Yeah.
And they were. What does that mean? They were drawn far into USSR.
They had to travel too far into
like
the
they were not close to the border, so they couldn't get supplies, right?
Yeah, because USSR is like big AF, like it's huge. It goes from like the eastern part of Europe all the way to
Mongolia.
the western part of Asia.
Okay.
And it is the only country that is in both the continent of Europe
And
and
Asia.
Asia.
Yeah. So then what's the scorched earth policy?
Scorched earth policy is when you decide to literally just burn everything down.
What? You just like burn it to the ground.
Yes, just burn everything down.
That sounds about right for Germany.
Hey,
Oh, sorry.
we don't need to read that quote, but if you would like to, you can.
It's not on their sheet.
It's not.
But it's an anonymous German soldier.
Yep. These are pictures. Obviously, there's snow.
Obviously, we just established that it was very north.
This is a picture of Stalingrad before the battle.
Okay, so
This is a picture of Stalingrad
holy cow!
after the battle.
It literally is scorched earth. It's like melted to the ground.
Yes.
Oh my god! And this is, oh man, crazy.
These are
Oh.
some lovely pictures.
Awful.
So the significance. Why is this battle significant? The Battle of Stalingrad claimed over
1,290,000 Soviets and
Dog.
what are you talking about?
Dog, come on. I've started
Oh,
here.
2 million casualties. I'm sorry. That's okay. I was getting there.
Okay.
2 million casualties, more than any other battle, and the way that it was separated was 1,290,000 Soviets, and Germans and their allies was 850,000. It was so important because 91,000 Germans were taken prisoner, which was such a massive loss of manpower and equipment. The Germans could not get enough manpower to cope with the Russian advancement to win Germany when it came.
So there's just some pictures. This is
Horses? Oh God!
the
Oh
picture
my God!
at the bottom.
Awful.
Stop it. Is a picture of horse hooves,
Oh.
which were discovered because
That's what they ate.
they had nothing left to eat, so they ate their
Horse
horses.
meat. Oh.
Which I mean,
I mean, of all
your
things,
dogs
it's
eat
not
it.
that bad.
So
I mean, at least they didn't eat each other.
in the Battle of Stalingrad,
The city was ruined.
the city was ruined, as you could see from the last picture. But the Soviets suffered more casualties than the United States did in the entire war.
Yeah, but the United States didn't join the war till late.
Yeah, but still.
Okay. It's a weird statement.
So this is a political cartoon that is making fun of the Soviet Union. This is Napoleon on a horse, while Hitler and his goons are
And their giant Mercedes.
driving to
Moscow?
Russia. This is a picture of the German POWs outside of Moscow. Being a German POW in the Soviet Union was not fun. You most likely were sent to the Gulag.
What's a gulag?
Which is it's like a work camp in Siberia where you literally just hammer rocks as your punishment, and you eat borscht.
Sure, it was better than the Nazi camps.
Well,
I mean,
still, many German POWs never actually came back from the gulags.
Oh, that's lovely.
Yeah.
Let's have a swing on our cannon.
The next, or the first involvement of U.S. troops in World War II, in Europe specifically,
was the war in Africa. In July 1942, Roosevelt ordered the invasion of Morocco and Algeria, and the French territories indirectly under German control. And this was under the command of Dwight D. Eisenhower and General Patton, and it led American forces to Morocco. Americans faced the German army for the first time, and then the American and British forces finally pushed the Germans back on May 13th, 1943, and the German forces finally surrendered in North Africa. I like that quote by Patton. We're not just going to shoot those bastards, we're going to cut out their living guts and use them to grease the threads of our tanks.
And General Patton was not a very nice person.
Seems like a
He was known for making his soldiers cry, especially ones that were suffering from post traumatic stress
oh Jesus,
disorder, which
what a
obviously was
nice
not
man.
was
It
not
wasn't even realized.
diagnosed
Yeah.
then, but there are several instances where he has made soldiers cry uh, for not wanting to fight because they just saw their whole platoons get blown up. But whatever.
So the goal of Operation Torch. It started on November 8th, 1942, and ended in May of 43. It was a battle in North Africa. It was a struggle for control of the Suez Canal and access to oil from the Middle East and raw materials from Asia. Oh, that sounds familiar.
Yeah.
The goal is clear that the excess of power. That's how you say it.
No,
How do you say it?
the goal: clear the Axis powers.
From North Africa to improve naval control in the Mediterranean Sea and prepare an invasion for southern Europe. Anything else you want to add?
I don't. So in early 1943, while the Allies were in North Africa and the Russians were destroying the Germans in Stalingrad, there's the Casablanca Conference, which was a meeting between Roosevelt and Churchill, and it is where they sort of outlined their plan for crushing the Axis or defeating the Axis.
It's
And
Go ahead.
yes,
I was gonna say it's in Casablanca, Morocco, which is why it's called the Casablanca Conference, right?
yeah.
So then Italy was next
So
on their
they
list.
outlined their plan for defeating the rest of Europe. Italy is the first country they want to liberate, and Italy is going to be the easiest one because all they did was appeal to the the Italians' own personal beliefs to overthrow the government.
So then there was the invasion of Italy, also known as the Italian Campaign, and it was basically to invade Sicily and most of the Italian mainland until the surrender of Italy and its people. The invasion began on September 3rd, 43, and they put in 160,000 troops, both the U.S. and British soldiers, right?
Mm-hmm. Here's a map. This is where they invaded.
So then in August of 43, the Italians were done. The Germans and the Italians were evacuated. This was the beginning of the end of Mussolini. They surrendered about a month later, and Italy was out of the war.
Yes.
So I read all that
There's some more pictures.
about Italy surrendering. There are also a lot of Jewish people in Italy, right?
Yeah, I think so.
And then a couple years later, on April 29th, in 45, Mussolini was killed. Him and his mistress were taken to Milan and hung upside down on meat hooks from the roof of a gas station and stoned by the civilians from below. Holy cow! Oh, that's awful. I mean, I understand, but oh God, that picture in the corner on the left side.
Sorry.
Oh, she was pretty, and then she was stoned. Not that kind of stoned, but stoned to death, right?
All right. The next conference is known as the Tehran Conference. It is
Finally, FDR, Churchill, and Stalin meet
yes.
in Iran to discuss the invasion of France. They agreed to break up control of Germany after the war, and Stalin agreed to help the U.S. defeat Japan.
This is a picture of the Allied occupation zones that they would sort of
Take over
after the war.
Interesting. So Operation Overload. This was
Lord.
Overlord. Excuse me. Sorry. It was a code name for the landing in France and the start of the liberation of Europe. The Allies planned the largest invasion in the history of the war, and it was a unified effort which planned to land on the beaches of Normandy in France.
If you look at those pictures, you can see these four guys. They're holding up what looks like the tanks, and they are tanks, but these are inflatable tanks. The Allies decided to fool the Germans and place a bunch of inflatable tanks and airplanes in another part of France. So the Germans thought that that was where they were going to land when they invaded Germany, but it turns out they invaded from Normandy.
So D-Day was a part of this as well.
Yes.
So Germans were in control of France. The Allied powers planned to invade Germany through the northern beaches of Normandy, but what happened? What happened? Tell it.
Oh, the Allied powers took the beach and brought with with them their vehicles and other important supplies.
Why do they call it D-Day?
It's called Disembarkment Day.
Hmm. Because that's when they disembarked their ships.
Yeah.
Interesting.
This is a map of the invasion.
I don't understand what's going on here.
Well, on this map, there is the different regiments of the soldiers. So the
In blue?
first, yeah, and then
Where's the red?
the red are the German army.
Interesting. Okay. So the Allied powers landed on the beaches here in these boats, and they were met with heavy machine gun fire from the German forces. So all they were they expecting them?
Oh yeah.
He's helpful, guys. Helpful.
Ugh.
Wait, so they colorized this picture after?
Yeah, it's not
Oh,
real.
Well, yeah, but it looks cool.
Yeah. These are pictures from Normandy.
Have you ever been there?
Never been.
So it was a joint effort by the Allied Supreme Commander Dwight Eisenhower, who later became president, right?
Yeah.
He sent almost 7,000 ships, 100,000 soldiers, and 23,000 paratroopers toward the coast of Normandy, France. The paratroopers dropped from the planes during the invasion.
Very dangerous.
So dropped to the beach or to the ocean?
Well, they originally were supposed to drop at specific parts in Normandy. They're supposed to drop behind the uh, the anti-aircraft guns, but they landed like all um, scattered throughout France. So by the time the Allies had invaded, the the machine guns were still aiming right at them where they couldn't really.
Could you imagine dropping from a plane where a machine gun is aimed at you?
Yeah. Well, a lot of people didn't even make it out of the plane, so
Why?
they got blown up.
The planes got blown up?
Yeah, dog.
Oh man.
It's an extremely successful invasion, although
Although people died.
yeah.
How many people died?
We went over that in the video. I don't remember.
That's helpful.
A lot. These are pictures. Poor quality. I apologize.
Well, I'm sure the cameras were very good. Soldiers?
Yeah.
Up?
Smoking cigs.
Victory in France. So they now had a passage to Europe and could begin to fight really against Germany. And the Soviet Union was now fighting the Germans on the eastern side of Europe as well as from USSR, right?
Yes.
So the victory was a long ways away, but they could still see an end in sight. Oh God, are those all the bodies?
Well, this is an artistic display
Oh,
at Normandy. These are outlines of bodies to sort of commemorate all the people who died um, landing on D-Day.
Jesus. Go back to the other picture. Come on, how many people was it?
I don't go on YouTube or Google.
You're okay.
I don't. I have it off the top of my head, dog.
Okay, dog.
But the important part about D-Day is it leads to the. What was I going to say? Shit. I forgot what I was going to say. The
Leads to D-Day.
liberation of France. There you go. If you see this picture, this is from the Champs Elysees. It's the Arc de Triomphe in the back. But this is the parade route that the Allies marched down.
That French accent was broken.
You like that?
Yeah, it was good.
Thanks. This is a photo of the what happened to people who supported the German army, specifically women.
Their
As they
head
would,
was shaved?
yeah, they would like gather them in like a town square, and they would shave their head. Most of these women are they would have been accused of like sleeping with the German soldiers.
People were so nice back then.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh God. And in their underwear.
Well,
I mean, I guess it
could be worse.
They could be dead.
Oh, don't worry about that or any of this.
So they.
So this leads to the Yalta Conference.
So the big three again: Churchill, FDR, and Stalin were involved.
They meet in 1945. If you look at FDR, he's looking a little
Old.
looking old.
So
He's
is
looking like
Churchill.
he's seen some things.
Wait, but where's Yalta?
Yalta is in
Germany, France, Italy.
Yalta. Let me get my. I don't know where Yalta is.
I don't know where Yalta is either.
Yalta not need to know that.
Yalta not important.
So the big decisions at the Yalta conference are one, to divide Germany, and two, divide or create the United Nations, which we still have to this day. But sadly, FDR dies April 12th, 1945. He did not live to see the end of the war, but he knew that the war was soon over. The next person to become president is his vice president, Harry Truman. This man right here.
So he had to pick up the pieces in the middle of the war.
We didn't really pick anything up. There's no pieces to pick up.
Okay, so then this leads to the Battle of the Bulge. This is also in France.
This is in Bastogne, Belgium.
Oh, in Belgium.
The Ardennes forest.
So it began in December of 1944, catching the American troops off guard. Why did it catch them off guard?
Why?
They weren't expecting it.
They weren't expecting it.
So Germany.
Because it was cold AF.
Germany went west. Their lines bulged outward, resulting in the battle's name. And the U.S. won this battle, even though they were caught off guard.
Yes.
January 8th, and the Germans withdrew and left a little to stop the Allies from entering Germany.
And many of the American soldiers defeated the Germans without any winter clothing.
But also, this was Hitler's attempt, right, to cut off supplies coming through Belgium to support the American soldiers.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. Yalta, by the way, is in. It doesn't say.
Oh, well, there you go.
No, it's Levida.
Jesus
I
Christ.
can't. Exactly.
No, find where Yalta is.
That's what I
It was in France. All right. So 1945, Germany surrenders.
Um,
The Allies had pushed the German forces back to Germany.
the Americans and the British were west of Berlin, and the Soviets were to the east. So the Battle of Berlin began, and Hitler actually killed himself as he knew that defeat was inevitable. And obviously, he
What
wouldn't.
the?
Um, he he didn't want to be prosecuted for all of his crimes, right? So, or all of his
Well,
issues, and he knew he
all
was
of
gonna
his
lose.
all of his issues.
Well, like all the things that he caused, right? So then
Yeah.
the Germans, a week after Hitler killed himself, the rest of the German, like military leaders were like, "Whatever, we can't do this without him. We give up. We're done." So a week later, in 1945, the Germans surrendered. Was that the end of the war?
No.
So suicide. Eva Braun took a cyanide pill, while Hitler took a pill and pulled the trigger of his put the trigger of his pistol in his mouth and blew out his brains.
Yep.
Oh
But there's no
my god! Evidence?
evidence of the body because rumor has it that the Russian army took the body and burned it. So there's a rumor that, well, I'm sure he's dead now, or if he was alive.
He'd be
But
like,
there's a rumor that he went to South America with a lot of the other Nazis.
oh. So Hitler and this is Hitler and his wife.
Yeah. Well,
His mistress.
his thought.
Trying to be cool. You're funny. During happier times, before they killed themselves.
Yeah.
What's VE Day?
Victory in Europe.
Oh, so May 7th, 1945, 45, Germany gave its unconditional surrender. And the next day, on May 8th, it was proclaimed Victory in Europe, or VE Day. V Day. So this is people celebrating on the
These are people celebrating.
on their parade.
Peace.
Peace
In Europe. But we still got a whole lot of mess going on
Asia.
in Asia.
Whoa.
There's a picture of the Allied troops on their way home. And that is it. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us today.
Hi.
I'm gonna watch it now.
No.
See how awful it is.
It's pretty awful.
It's not that bad.